She was supposed to be just another employee. Instead, she became the biggest distraction in a CEO's perfectly planned life. Wait, I explain I have already uploaded parts 1 in this manhwa. This is the part 2, if you make sure you completely watch part 1. Let's started remembered bumping into assistant manager Kong the previous night. His thoughts lingered on what had happened after they had parted, as the man she referred to as Appa had escorted her to her hotel room. Thinking back to his own words, particularly his comment about the relationship between Minhyung and him, he felt a wave of frustration before stopping himself, reminding himself that it was none of his business. Later that day at the office, Minhyung greeted Tai as usual, to which he responded with a simple acknowledgement. Sitting in the car, he observed that she seemed unaffected, assuming that she must have slept well since she showed no signs of a hangover. As Minhyung proceeded with the usual briefing, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was looking at him. He found himself unwilling to meet her gaze, irritated by the sound of her voice. Everything about her was getting on his nerves, though he couldn't quite explain why. At the TK Group Tower, Minjing knocked on his office door before informing him that lunch was ready. Glancing at the door briefly, T responded that he wouldn't be eating, explaining that he had no appetite. Additionally, he asked her to cancel all his appointments for the day, stating that he wasn't feeling well. Minkyung acknowledged his request and left. Her thoughts unsettled, she groaned at the thought that she had to return his gift, but distress clouded her mind. She wondered if she had lost her senses, questioning what she had done. The dilemma of whether to act as if nothing had happened or to apologize weighed on her. However, considering how Tai had been avoiding her, she doubted he would want to see her, at least for the rest of the day. The embarrassment of the situation overwhelmed her. Later, as assistant Kim Chun drove T, he inquired about their destination. Tai simply instructed him to start driving. Watching the passing scenery, he fell into silence. Kim Chun, noticing his mood, suggested taking him to the riverside, believing the open, well-ventilated space would be refreshing. T, sensing something in his tone, questioned whether he looked that bad. Kim Chun affirmed it, pointing out that Tai always called him whenever something was weighing on his mind. That was precisely why he wanted to take him somewhere relaxing. Tai considered how quickly Kim Chun picked up on things. Kim Ch then mentioned that assistant manager Minkyung had once said there was nothing like a run by the river to clear one's thoughts. Ta, caught off guard, was surprised to hear her name, questioning if that was her exercise routine. Kim Chun confirmed that it was one of her hobbies, adding that she often ran up to 10 a.m. a day. Ta found it hard to believe that she managed to make time for workouts despite her busy schedule. His mind unintentionally wandered to the image of her well-worn physique, causing him to feel embarrassed. Frustrated with himself, he snapped at Kim Chun, demanding that he drive quietly instead of talking so much, to which Kim Chun quickly apologized. At dawn, back at Ta's house, his younger sister, Soo-jin, casually questioned him about his sudden attendance at family meals. She pointed out that he had always claimed to be too busy to join them. T, unfazed, asked why she was making it sound as though he was the only one who had been absent. The conversation soon shifted as Tae-jun mentioned having gone to Songbak-cha. Tai asks about the reason, to which Tae-jun explained that he was getting engaged to Waki-uang and had needed to meet the chairman. Soo-jin praised him, exclaiming that he was incredibly cool. Tai, unimpressed, remarked that she seemed to find everything cool. Soo-jin continued excitedly, declaring that it was amazing. TK Electronics director had chosen his woman honestly, having fallen deeply in love. She referenced a magazine article that had called Tae-jun a romantic man, claiming that such men were rare in today's world. Ta dryly commented that it was truly a love story fit for this century. Soo-jin shifting her focus to Tai, who had spent his entire life working without ever being in a relationship. But she playfully questioned what they should do with him, suggesting that he must be burning with frustration inside. Tai groaned, irritated by her teasing, suspecting that she had come just to get on his nerves. Sujin, laughing it off, told him not to take it seriously. Tai dismissed the conversation, deciding to step out for some fresh air. Before leaving, he called for Taejun, suggesting that they talk for a moment. Outside, the summer heat lingered in the air. As Taejun took a sip of alcohol, some dribbled onto his shirt. Ta, watching him, felt uneasy. Taejun remained oblivious, seemingly unbothered by the burning sensation that should have accompanied the strong liquor. Casually, Taejun mentioned that Sujin had told him something interesting. She had claimed that women found it attractive when a man drank like that. Tae, baffled, questioned whether he had gone mad. Taejun, brushing it off, shifted the conversation, noting that it was unusual for the executive director to be the one calling him first. He asked if something was wrong. Delili, maintaining a serious tone, stated that there was a reason. Without hesitation, he brought up assistant manager King, requesting that Taejun take her back to his team. As the question was posed about her performance, Taejun stated that she was doing an excellent job, which Till attempted to deny. However, he was questioned as to why he was deflecting the topic. Instead of pressing further, Taeyeon mentioned that his team already had plenty of capable staff, and he believed that assistant manager Kong was performing well in her current role. As Tai continued to refute the claim, Taejun further added that he had no reason to want to take her back to his team, which caused Tai to pause. Ta remarked that both of them were aware that she was too talented to remain in a secretary position. Taejun acknowledged that he had known this from the beginning, yet he had refrained from requesting her transfer until that moment. He then questioned whether there might be another reason behind Tai's reluctance. The next morning, Sujin was at Tae's apartment, yelling his name and demanding that he open the door immediately. Once inside, she presented him with an article, an exclusive report about the TK group's eldest son, Tae, being in a romantic relationship. The article was accompanied by photos of him with Min Young. It was stated that he had been spotted with an unidentified woman. And since he had always kept his personal life private, the news of him being in close proximity to an ordinary woman at a hotel bar had attracted significant public attention. Sujin giggled while mocking him, questioning what was happening. Observing the situation, Ta was left stunned, muttering in disbelief as he questioned the legitimacy of the article. Sujin, in a loud voice, reiterated the news, emphasizing that TK Group's Ta Li had been seen with an unknown woman. She continued to mock him, reading from the article that described him as the executive director of TKCT, known for fiercely protecting his private life, now making headlines for being seen in close proximity to an ordinary woman at all. Tai was visibly taken aback, and before he could respond, Sujin pressed him further, questioning the identity of the woman who had managed to make him falter. As he attempted to explain, Sujin dismissed his words, insisting that she would simply have to figure it out herself. She then confidently speculated that the woman in question was Kong Minkying. T, overwhelmed with shock, questioned how she had reached that conclusion. To his dismay, Sujin revealed that she had not been certain. It had merely been a guess, but his reaction had confirmed her suspicions, causing him to cry out in frustration. Sujin pointed out that she had never seen him hugging a girl before. As he tried to refute the claim, asking what she meant by hugging, she reminded him that he typically reacted strongly even to minor physical contact. Finding the situation amusing, she enthusiastically commented on how incredible it was, further teasing him by suggesting that this could be the beginning of an office-orn romance. T was quick to deny any romantic involvement, insisting that there was a reasonable explanation for everything. However, Sujin dismissed his protests, claiming that his life needed some romance and that he should consider dating someone, anyone. She continued to press him, questioning when he planned to start dating. T, growing frustrated, insisted that she should respect his personal space and talk to him without invading it. Sujin, unwilling to back down, speculated whether he was considering a political marriage, as the elders had suggested, to secure harmony between TK Group and the Choi family in order to be recognized as the true successor of TK. She pointed out that he had lived his entire life adhering to the law of loyalty. Tai, now exasperated, shouted that it was not true. Struggling to find the right words, he attempted to explain that he had no thoughts about marriage. Sujin, however, was not convinced and continued to probe, suggesting that he simply did not want to date just anyone. After a brief pause, he with visible embarrassment declared that he intended to date only the woman he fell for at first sight. Sujin was left completely astounded by his words. She reacted dramatically, exclaiming that his declaration was astonishing, proclaiming that the greatest pure-hearted man of their time stood before her. Ta, now fully flustered, yelled at her to show some respect, reminding her that she had been the one who had asked in the first place. As his frustration grew, he demanded that she hand over her allowance card. Sujin, laughing, dismissed his demand, stating that they were already submitting too much. Before leaving, she playfully expressed her support for his love life and thanked him for the allowance, leaving Ta fuming. Unable to contain his embarrassment, he slapped his forehead. Feeling too humiliated to face himself, the scene shifted as Minjing bowed deeply, expressing her sincere apologies for the significant damage caused to the executive director due to her personal matters. T acknowledged that an article had indeed been written about the incident, but he assured her that she did not need to apologize so profusely. He admitted that he was also partly responsible for getting entangled in her personal affairs. However, Min Kong argued that the situation was a result of her own negligence as his secretary. She insisted that it was her duty to prevent such incidents and was deeply ashamed of her failure to stop the spread of false, disorderly, and malicious reports. With a determined expression, she vowed to do everything in her power to prevent any further harm to the executive director's reputation. Kylie, somewhat surprised by her resolute stance, hesitated before assuring her that it was truly okay and asked her to stop dwelling on the matter. Shifting the conversation, he brought up another meeting she had scheduled. Minuing promptly confirmed that there was an external meeting with the construction company. Tai, acknowledging the arrangement, suggested they proceed as planned, to which Minkying responded by stating that she would call for the car. As they boarded the elevator, T found himself lost in thought. He questioned whether it had been necessary for her to bow so deeply in apology. He considered that perhaps she had been acting purely out of professionalism. After all, it was her job to manage such situations. He reminded himself that caring for Kong Minkying was simply another responsibility he had to handle. She was merely fulfilling her duties as his secretary. As the elevator doors opened, Tai found himself momentarily distracted by his thoughts, wondering what exactly had been going through his mind. Stepping out of the elevator, he was immediately met with a blinding flurry of camera flashes. Paparazzi and reporters swarmed him, shouting questions and taking numerous photos. Overwhelmed by the sudden chaos, he felt an intense wave of nausea wash over him. Just as he felt as though he might collapse, a familiar voice cut through the noise, calling out his name. Minyoung's concerned voice reached him just as he was on the verge of losing control. As Minkying observed that his face appeared pale, his breathing seemed shallow, and he looked visibly nervous. She wondered if it could be a panic attack. She questioned why reporters were present at a time like this while barely managing to support him. A car suddenly dashed in between them as assistant Kim Chun urged her to get in. As soon as they entered the vehicle and sped away, Minkying called out to him, asking if he was okay. Ta, feeling an overwhelming heaviness, struggled to hear anything, his breath growing more labored before he eventually lost consciousness on Minkyung's lap. Flashes of memories resurfaced as Tai recalled someone calling out to him, insisting that the TK group belonged to him and that all eyes were on him. A series of fragmented images and articles about him as the next successor flooded his mind. His daily life had always demanded maintaining perfect posture, never lowering his guard and constantly reminding himself that he was the face of TK's future. He remembered a photographer instructing him to smile as another camera flash illuminated the scene. Numerous voices echoed in his head, urging him to wake up. Regaining consciousness, Tai found himself in a hospital. Realizing he had blacked out, he questioned the reason, thinking he had already overcome such episodes. However, recalling Minyoung's face, he wondered if Kong Minkying had truly been there. Turning his head, he noticed her dozing off on the sofa. He speculated whether she had stayed by his side all this time. Glancing at the watch, he noted that she had not even left for work despite how late it was, which explained her exhaustion. Minyoung stirred, grumbling softly as she awoke to find Tai looking at her. Immediately turning to him, she instructed him to lie back down, insisting that he should not be up yet. Though Tai assured her he felt fine, Min Kong remained firm, urging him to sit instead. He then suggested that she leave, acknowledging that she must be tired, but she refused, stating she would not do so. She insisted on taking responsibility for not managing the executive director's condition in advance, which was why she had voluntarily stayed. Determined, she informed him that she had kept a few meals aside for him over the past few days, and would only leave after confirming that he had eaten. Surprised by her persistence, Tai questioned why she felt the need to do so, arguing that he was not a child. However, Minkying remained insistent, advising him to take a moment before accepting the meal she had prepared. She admitted it might not suit his taste, but made it clear that he had to finish it regardless. She also assured him that she had handled the day's schedule, eliminating any need for concern. Taking a brief pause, Tai expressed his gratitude. But before he could say more, the sound of Minkying's stomach growling broke the silence. Amused, Tai chuckled while Minkying flushed with embarrassment. Without hesitation, Tai instructed her to bring a plate for herself, stating that he would not eat unless she did. As she retrieved her portion, he casually remarked that he had once assumed she was like a robot. Catching her off guard, he elaborated that seeing her eat in such a relaxed manner proved she had a human side. Flustered, Minjing immediately attempted to correct her behavior, but Tai quickly clarified that he had not meant it negatively. After a brief silence, Tai shared that the first time he had collapsed was when he turned 20. His father had always been strict, emphasizing that he had to be perfect and composed at all times with reporters constantly watching, waiting for any mistake. He had to be doubly cautious. He understood the reasons behind it. His words, his actions, everything he did carried weight, and he could not afford to tarnish the company's image. Journalists followed his every move, anticipating his failure. Though he had convinced himself he had grown accustomed to the blinding flashes, in reality, he had not. One day during a family photo session, he had collapsed, just as he had now. With a slight smile, he advised Mkayuwang to relax, suggesting that she should not be so tense all the time. Acknowledging that he had spoken at length, he encouraged her to finish her meal. As she listened, Minyoung silently reflected, realizing that he had endured far more hardship than she had previously imagined. Before leaving, Minyoung informed him that she would prepare for the video meeting in the morning and return by 8 a.m. Frowning, Ta pointed out that it was already quite late and questioned whether arriving at work by 8 a.m. was too early. Mong, however, reminded him that the meeting had already been postponed once the previous day, and delaying it further would be problematic. Reassuring him that most of the necessary data had already been prepared, she told him not to worry. As she prepared to leave, Ta stopped her, noting that work would begin in just a few hours and suggesting that she stay there for the night instead. As Tai suddenly felt jitters, he began questioning whether he had lost his mind and what kind of nonsense he had just blurted out. Before he could process it further, Minyoung called out to him, addressing him as the executive director and inquiring whether there was something he had wanted to say. However, Ta immediately denied it, insisting that she forget whatever had just happened and go home. Without questioning him further, Minyoung excused herself and moved out of the room. Meanwhile, Ta remained frozen in place, cursing himself under his breath, scratching his hair in frustration. He wondered what was wrong with him. He thinks, did he hit his head too hard when he passed out? Screaming inwardly, he struggled to make sense of his own actions. The scene shifted to the following morning as Tai woke up, stretching slightly before realizing that despite having had a full night's rest, he still felt utterly drained. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts, and Minkying entered, greeting him as she approached. Without wasting time, she informed him about the upcoming video call concerning business matters. The meeting was scheduled to examine the revised plan, and discussions regarding the contract terms would follow. After reviewing the business feasibility, Tai listened as Minjing offered to relay the necessary details, all while he silently speculated about her exhaustion. Though she had likely overexerted herself, she showed no visible signs of fatigue. This was precisely why she was known as Kong Minong, always composed, always reliable. In contrast, he found himself acting unlike his usual self. He couldn't deny it. He had indeed spoken a lot of nonsense the previous night. Blaming it on his condition, he dismissed it as an unusually emotional day. Minkying called out to T once more, informing him that the morning schedule had been successfully completed. She also mentioned that she had cleared the afternoon schedule, taking into consideration the executive director's physical condition. Appreciating her efforts, Tai thanked her. A sudden knock on the door disrupted the moment, and Sujin entered, carrying a bouquet of flowers. Glancing at her in disbelief, Tai pointed toward her, unable to hide his shock as he questioned why she was there. Sujin, unfazed by his reaction, explained that since her brother had been hospitalized after collapsing, their mother had sent the flowers for him. Ta immediately became concerned, asking if their mother was aware of the situation. Sujin, with a mischievous glint in her eyes, confirmed his fears, stating that he was in big trouble as Mom had even gone to the US to buy him medicine. This revelation left Tai utterly speechless. Observing his reaction, Minuing thought about how despite everything, it was nice to have a close family connection. Just as the thought crossed his mind, Sujin approached Minuing, addressing her directly. She confidently identified her as Assistant Manager Kong, prompting Minuing to confirm her identity and politely greet her as the Executive Director's secretary. Sujin, seemingly pleased, remarked that she had met Minkying before. Recalling how she had won first place in the company's new recruit competition, praising her as impressive, Sujin expressed her admiration. Embarrassed by the unexpected compliment, Minuang downplayed it, stating that she was merely flattered. Before the conversation could continue, Tai interjected, calling out to Sujin and telling her she had no reason to be there any longer. He urged her to stop spouting nonsense and leave. However, Sujin, ignoring his protest, grabbed his arm and questioned what his problem was, insisting that she had hardly done anything wrong. She asked him to step aside and talk with her for a moment. T, irritated by her persistence, asked what she intended to say. Leaning in, Sujin whispered something unexpected. She offered to help him. Ta, stunned by her words, immediately questioned why he would need her assistance. Smirking, Sujin teasingly asked whether she should simply tell Minuing everything instead. Her words made Tae frown, his suspicion growing as he demanded to know what she was planning. Ignoring his question, Sujin turned to Minkying and casually suggested that they go buy coffee together, emphasizing that the patient should remain in his hospital room. Minkying, seeing no reason to refuse, agreed and followed Sujin outside. As they walked, Sujin spoke up, acknowledging that Minjing must have been surprised the previous day. Minjing admitted that she had not expected the executive director to collapse like that, but was relieved to see that he seemed to be recovering well. Sujin, however, expressed her own concerns, stating that it was unusual for her brother to collapse. She explained that as far back as she could remember, she had never seen him take a proper break, so it was hardly surprising that his body had finally given in. Continuing the conversation, Sujin revealed details about their family history. She explained that their father had always been ambitious, expecting Tai to act and present himself as the perfect successor. Their father had been driven by greed, but his capabilities had never been enough to match his ambitions. As a result, their grandfather had disowned him long ago. However, through Tai, their father had attempted to restore his own position within TK Group. In his relentless pursuit of their father's approval and their grandfather's recognition, Tae Lee had pushed himself to extreme lengths. However, everything had changed when he turned 20, because that was when Kung Tun had appeared. Sujin proceeded to mention Tyan, noting that she was well aware of his story. Minyoung, recalling that it had been a widely discussed topic at the time, confirmed that she knew quite a bit about it. She remembered that Taisai, the youngest daughter of the TK Group chairman, had once fallen in love with an unknown volleyball player and had lived in hiding after fleeing to the United States. 2 decades later, after keeping her life a secret, the existence of her son had been revealed, along with the tragic news of her passing. Expanding on the story, Soo-jun disclosed that their grandfather had finally accepted Tae-jun as his grandson after her aunt's passing. Not only that, but Mr. Tae had even granted him the family name to Ta Lee, who had long believed himself to be the only rightful successor to TK Group. This revelation had come as a massive shock. He had devoted his entire youth to ensuring that he would never be surpassed by Tae-jun, who was the same age as him. Yet due to a mistake made by their father, half of the company had ultimately been handed over to Tae-jun. To Tai, it must have felt as though his entire life had been turned upside down. Hearing all of this, Minjing found herself reflecting on how she had always perceived Tai as nothing more than a self-centered crown prince. Never had she imagined him being in such a difficult position. Sujin, noticing her expression, chuckled and pointed out that to make matters worse, Ta had not even been given time to process any of it. The moment he had turned 20, he had been thrust into the business world without a break, facing overwhelming pressure from all sides. Minkying, feeling a newfound sense of sympathy, admitted that she felt sorry for him. Sujin, in turn, grasped Minyoung's hands and expressed her relief that she was by her brother's side. Smiling warmly, she affectionately addressed her as Minking Uni, asking if she could continue calling her that. Seeing Sujin's bright, eager eyes, Min Kong was unable to refuse. She reminded her so much of her own younger siblings. Sujin then hugged Minkyong, expressing her frustration. She worried about her brother, lamenting that even when given the chance to rest, he was incapable of doing so. Instead, he remained glued to his work, even from his hospital bed. She tearfully asked what she could possibly do to help him relax. Moved by her sincerity, Minkyong gently patted Sujin's back, assuring her that there was no need to cry. Seeing Sujin's teary eyes, Minkying found herself unable to resist, and with determination, she vowed to find a solution. Delighted, Sujin beamed and praised her, declaring that she was truly the best. The scene shifted as Assistant Kim Chun enthusiastically proclaimed that having fun was his specialty. Sitting in the car, T, bewildered, questioned why they had suddenly decided to go to Gangwon-do. Minkying, unfazed, explained that proper rest not only aided recovery, but also enhanced productivity and creativity, which in turn directly influenced work performance. As his assistant, she was determined to ensure his full recovery. Though Tai grumbled that simply sleeping in for a few days would have sufficed, Minyoung could tell he was secretly excited. She beamed at his face, thinking maybe she was pushing him too hard. Smiling, she resolved to make sure this vacation went perfectly. As the driver, Kim Chong had taken on multiple responsibilities over the years. He had served as the president of his elementary, middle and high school entertainment clubs, acted as the representative of Joanga, and even led the university's automotive engineering department's self-made automotive club. Due to his extensive involvement and dedication, Sujin had acknowledged his consistent efforts, which ultimately led her to appoint him as the driver for the trip. In his role as assistant, Kim Chong appeared genuinely excited, especially since he had gone out of his way to book excellent accommodations for everyone. Minyoung expressed her appreciation, thanking him for recognizing the importance of their comfort. As they set off, Ta curiously asked how far they were actually going, to which Sujin casually remarked that the fewer the people they were, the better the experience tended to be. Eventually, the group arrived at Freedom Pension, a healing retreat with top-tier rooms and a glowing reputation based on online reviews. The check-in had gone smoothly, and the place had looked just as impressive in person as it had in the pictures. Kim Chan eagerly pointed out the ladies' room and the men's room, proudly explaining that both rooms were incredibly spacious, clearly well designed for relaxation. The surrounding natural scenery had only enhanced the atmosphere, causing Tai to reflect on the moment. He quietly noted that the four of them would be sleeping there, trying to process everything as it settled in. Sujin seemed slightly confused, questioning why there were only 2 rooms for 4 people. Kim Chan assured her that it was more than enough space, especially considering the number of guests, and then casually asked whether they should begin unpacking. Pa, however, had begun feeling uneasy about the arrangements. The idea of sharing a room hadn't sat well with him, and he couldn't believe that he was actually going to be sleeping beside someone else. He already anticipated that he wouldn't be able to rest properly with someone so close by. Meanwhile, in the next room, Sujin called out to Minkyung, questioning whether that was all she had packed. Minkyung calmly affirmed that she had brought only what was necessary to stay comfortable. Sujin stated that it had been a long time since she had been on vacation, adding that she intended to make sure she looked the part. Kim Chan, playing the part of the ever-prepared assistant, had called out for the ladies, asking if they were ready. Sujin had responded for both of them, confirming that they were on their way. As the women came downstairs, Sujin appeared alongside Minhyung. Both of them dressed stylishly for the outing. Sujin affirmed that they should get going. Upon seeing Minkyung in a short skirt, Tylee's face had turned red from embarrassment. With visible discomfort, he asked why she had chosen to dress like that. Sujin simply replied that they were on vacation, brushing off his concern. She then playfully teased Tylee, noting out loud how amazing Minhyung's figure was. T, clearly flustered, growled and scolded Sujin, urging her to stop making such strange comments as they all moved out together. Once they had stepped outside, Minkyung brought up the idea of forming groups due to limited time. She casually suggested that she would go grocery shopping with driver Kim Chan and encourage Tai to explore the area and see if there were any fun places nearby. She then cheerfully waved him off before departing with Kim Chan. As she left, Mkayuwang added that she would be back after scouting the surrounding area. T quietly stated that they could have just gone together, feeling a bit left out. Later, while walking through the forest, Minhyung turned to ask whether Ta liked the place. He responded honestly, saying he didn't really know since he hadn't been there much before. Minhyung then reminisced, mentioning how there had once been a mountain near her childhood home that looked quite similar. It had become a favorite spot for her and her friends who would often play there, collecting insects, picking flowers, and running under the summer sun. She admitted that the scent of the forest had brought back those memories. Ta commented that it sounded like a beautiful memory, to which Minjing nodded in agreement. At one point, Minkyung called Tae's attention to a nearby patch of ripe mountain raspberries. She took a bite of one and assured him it was sweet and delicious. As she offered him one, Ta, seeing her bright smile, got a little embarrassed as he accepted without thinking, taking a bite himself. However, after a moment, his expression soured. He grumbled that it was bitter and extremely sour. Minhyung had laughed, realizing that she had accidentally handed him an unripe one. After that, they spent quite a bit of time enjoying the forest, and Tai even made a flower ring for her. Sitting beside her, T found himself reflecting on how he had never felt this way before. Minkyung, watching him, thought that she had never seen the executive director wear such a relaxed expression, thinking that he truly seemed to be enjoying himself for once. Minkyung reminded him of something he had said earlier, something about relaxing his shoulders and living a little. She thought this trip might be the perfect opportunity for both her and the executive director to unwind. She admitted to feeling happy when he agreed to join them, to which Tom muttered that he had never visited a place like this before. After a brief pause, he quietly confessed that he liked it. At that moment, raindrops began to fall. Minhyung looked up, noting aloud that it was starting to rain. As the rain quickly intensified, T suggested they return. They both agreed and started to run back. While rushing along the path, Ta noticed how slippery it had become. He turned to Minkying and warned her to watch her step. She acknowledged him, but appeared to struggle on the wet ground. Just as she was about to slip, Tai instinctively reached out and caught her, asking her to hold his hand. She gratefully accepted, thanking him in the process. As they ran across the open field, Tai had cursed under his breath, feeling as though he was losing control. Though it wasn't summer, he couldn't understand why the rain had poured so heavily. Still with Minkying's hand in his, he continued running through the rain. While running through the rain, Mingying and Tai reached a small bus stop. Both were quite drenched, and Tai turned his attention toward Mingying, noticing how soaked she had become. As Mingying glanced back, she noticed Tai taking off his upper garment, which he soaked dry and wrapping it around her. He mentioned that driver Kim Chun would arrive shortly and urged her to use it to stay warm. Until then, Mingying felt touched by the gesture. Seeing Ta's shirt clinging to him and his face slightly flushed, quite red, she remarked that he looked like the one who needed to stay warm. As she extended her hand toward him, she asked if he was all right. Tai turned his face away, clearly embarrassed, and affirmed that he was perfectly fine. He added that he might only be a bit warm from running all the way. Mingying, however, pointed out that his face was beet red. She raised her arm, placing it on his forehead, and claimed he might have a fever, warning that they would be in trouble if he caught a cold. Tail, flustered by the sudden closeness, turned away and repeated that he was fine. Minkying disagreed, saying it didn't seem that way. While Tylee was having a hard time thinking, something might have made him feel sick, and perhaps he felt like throwing up. Just then, a car pulled up with a screech and Sujin shouted, asking what they were doing out there, completely soaked, and urged them to get in quickly. Once inside the car, they explained that the rain had started suddenly, and it hadn't been in the forecast. One of them remarked that it must have come as a surprise. Sujin then questioned why they had come all the way out here, as if the situation had occurred randomly. As the car moved forward, a speed bump was announced. At that moment, Ta's leg accidentally brushed against Mingying's. Tai felt quite embarrassed, but Mingying was too busy chatting to notice. The scene shifted to a hotel where Tai and Mingying were preparing food together. T occasionally glanced at her. After grilling the meat, he stayed quiet while Mingying seemed to enjoy spending time with Sujin, laughing and smiling along with everyone. Later that night, Tai gazed at the moon, holding a withered flower in his hand. Suddenly, Mingying called out to him from behind. Startled, he quickly hid the flower in his pocket. She said she had been looking for him and asked why he was there alone. He explained that he just wanted to get some fresh air, and they sat together. Mkai Wang said she had a lot of fun that day and hadn't realized how much she needed it, having worked non-stop. Now that they were all together enjoying themselves, she felt she had been moving forward without looking back. T paused, then admitted he understood. He stated that he had been living so intensely that he feared he might be holding her back. Minkying, after a brief silence, disagreed. She explained that when she was younger, she had excelled in everything because she was smart. She did well in her studies and started working immediately after graduating college due to her family's financial situation. She believed she could simply keep going forward. T responded, affirming that she had indeed done well. Mingying added that she could do even better as the assistant to the executive director. She expressed her determination to support him until he reached the top of the TK group, vowing to stay by his side and give her all. She promised to continue delivering good results. Ta turned to her and encouraged her to do it, which made her smile. Later that night, Mingying's phone rang. She mentioned it was her phone and asked for a moment. T told her not to worry and to answer the call. She stepped away and picked it up. Tae, still nearby, unintentionally overheard the conversation. Mingying was telling Hyeonsong that she was working. The softness in her voice left Tai unsettled as Hyeonsong questioned what she was doing, to which Mingying simply replied that she was working, greatly taking him aback. He froze in his place. In a quiet tone, she whispered that she had come to a workshop with a colleague from the company. After that, Tai moved out of his place. Afterwards, when T returned, a soft smile veiled his cold demeanor. His cutting remarks delivered in a gentle tone, and the inherent arrogance which even strict manners and upright posture couldn't conceal, made it clear he was someone who had ruled for a lifetime. The crown prince of TK Group carried that aura. Mingyuing hurried over to him, informing him that she would now report his next schedule. She mentioned a dinner appointment scheduled with Mr. Kim Jong, the CEO of a company, at 5 p.m. After dinner, there was a spa appointment booked at 8:00 p.m. As T nodded in acknowledgement, Mingyuing noticed something different about him. Ever since their return from the trip, he had been acting like a completely different person. His attitude had become 10 times colder than the past version of himself. As she recalled his earlier actions and smile on the trip, she questioned whether everything that happened during the trip had been her imagination. But she quickly denied that, thinking Tale had always been like this underneath. The scene shifted toward the car where Tai was reviewing and signing documents. As he glanced at Mingyuing, she addressed him formally as the executive director. When she turned to him, she said she would begin the day's briefing, for which he gave his approval. While Tai listened, Mingyuing reported that there was a business meeting scheduled at headquarters at 10 a.m. and another one at 12 p.m. She added that he would be having lunch with Mr. Lai Zhang, the CEO of a corporation. As she continued, Tai thought she had been working really hard. He recalled the vacation conversation she had with Hyen, where she mentioned she was working. Thinking that she seemed to love working so much, Tylee decided he would allow her to do it endlessly without hesitation. He handed her a pile of documents, asking her to organize them all before tomorrow's meeting, every single one of them. Mingyong acknowledged the task with a firm nod. Later, when she reported back with the prepared documents, Tae-lee told her that the readability wasn't quite right and asked her to reorganize them properly and return with an improved version. She agreed, promising she would fix it better. After reworking them, she brought the files again. This time, Tai stated that on second thought, the original format had been better and instructed her to revert to the unedited version. Minkyung simply affirmed once more and went back to do it. Despite all the revisions and the numerous tasks he had thrown at her over the past week, there had been no fluctuation in Mingyung's voice or attitude. Tai knew she hadn't changed since the day they met. Yet that unshakable calmness only made him grit his teeth in frustration. Later, Mingying knocked on his door to report that dinner had been arranged from the restaurant. She explained that she had ordered mushroom risotto and wheatgrass juice, thinking it might be more convenient for him than a salad. Tai Lee noticed it immediately. It was his favorite dish from the restaurant he frequented. Thinking, as expected, it was perfect. He took a bite, chewed it slowly, and then set the spoon down, clearly trying to stall her. He asked if this had been Director Kang's preference and suggested she should eat it herself. He also added coldly that he didn't eat things like wheatgrass juice. Without reacting, Minkyung stared at him and replied that she had prepared other dishes just in case. She served abalone porridge, explaining that it had been specially ordered from El Hotel, and politely asked him to enjoy the meal. Pyle, barely able to hold back his anger, thought to himself that it was absolutely delicious, and that fact made him even angrier. He cursed her silently for being so considerate. That night, as Tai opened the door, he saw Mingyung. She asked if he was heading out and offered to have the car prepared, but Tai paused and was shocked by the previous dish. He asked what she was eating. Mingyung reminded him that he had just told her it was Director Kang's preference, so she should eat it. Taken aback, Tai quickly denied that it was what he meant. She asked if he intended to eat it and whether she should reorder it, to which Tai snapped that he had already eaten abalone porridge. He cursed her internally, wondering if she was doing it on purpose just to provoke him. Minkyung replied calmly that she had only chosen to eat there to save time, as she had a lot of work to finish that night. This seemed to depress T even further. He called out to her asking if she was sure it was okay for her to eat it. Minkyung responded by saying that she always washed the spoons, so there was no need for him to worry. Ta, completely embarrassed, thought she was really like that person. It was driving him mad. He grabbed a glass and gulped it all down in one go. Minkying, surprised, reminded him that she had already drunk from that glass. T paused and then wiped his mouth with a tissue. He asked why it even mattered. After all, it was originally his. He questioned her again about whether she intended to drink it and whether she wanted him to reorder it, stating that he would leave now. Before walking away, he glanced at her computer screen and mentioned that she had done a good job organizing the slides. As he got closer to her, he leaned in slightly and whispered that she had done well, then turned and walked out. After he stepped away, Tai paused outside the door and suddenly burst into laughter. He thought she must have felt the tension, and seeing her face flushed like that, he believed she looked great. Still giggling, he walked off, unable to stop the laugh forming because of her face. Afterwards, the scene opened with Tae Lee cursing himself quietly, striking his shoes against the floor out of frustration, as it was the final day. Min Kong approached asking if he was there, and reminded him that they should get going. As they entered the meeting room, Min Yuing greeted the employees, and asked if they had been waiting long. They replied that they hadn't, and one of them greeted the executive director politely. The man introduced himself as Ming Jiho, a lawyer and legal advisor for the Becky Young Resort M&A project. Another man stepped forward and introduced himself too. He introduced himself as Lee Hunong, a lawyer at M&P. At that moment, Tae Lee greeted Hunong. He smiled lightly and said it was nice to see them again. And Hunong returned the greeting politely. As the person whom Minkying calls Hunong Appa, the unfortunate guy was starting at T-Hun was officially starting today at TK Group, joining the Baekhyang Resort acquisition and merger project, which had already been progressing steadily. A task force had been set up in the resort business division specifically for the M&A. But what irritated him the most was that he had been sent of all people questioning why that guy. Tail frowned as out of every law firm they could have chosen. He questioned why it had to be that one, thinking, why did they assign someone like Hyan to this particular project? It didn't make sense to him, and the more he thought about it, the more annoyed he felt. Later at the tower, Min Yuing returned to her usual routine, reporting to Tai and handling a heavy workload after their brief vacation. She didn't complain, even though the work ranged from a massive workload after a short but dreamy vacation, to bustling secretarial tasks, to supporting the TF team. There was no break, but Minjing motivated herself that she is Kong Minjing and she can do it. Tail sat at his desk, typing casually on his keyboard. Thoughts of Minyoung's exhausted expression crossed his mind. He thought that she looked more worn out than usual lately. He wondered if he was being too harsh on her. But then again, he reminded himself he was the boss. It was normal for him to assign tasks, and maybe he was just overthinking it. He stood up and walked out, but didn't see Minkyung anywhere. He asked himself where she had gone, and stepped toward her desk. Her things were scattered around, not as neatly arranged as usual. He looked at the mess and muttered under his breath, wondering if she had even been eating properly. He called her a fool in frustration, and said that if she was having a hard time, she should have said so. He headed to another part of the office. Some employees looked surprised to see him, and asked what brought him there. Tai simply said he stopped by trying to impress him. The employees praised his leadership. They said his attention to detail had boosted team morale, and mentioned how they had been receiving clear messages through Secretary Minuing. They added that Minuang was exceptional. She seemed to understand everything, even while being busy with her personal life. They admired how quickly she handled all the tasks. Tile smiled lightly and agreed. He said she was doing an excellent job as a secretary. Then he asked them where she was. One employee said that she was currently with the TF. Hearing that, Ta turned away. His expression darkened as he was quite irritated, thinking why was she with the TF team? Without saying anything more, he walked out. At the TF team's area, the Baekhyang Resort M&A task force was in action. Minkying was there working with Hyanong and Minnie Ho. Tai peered in, and immediately felt more annoyed. The three of them seemed too comfortable with one another, and it bothered him. He cursed internally as he opened the door. The people in the room turned, surprised to see him there. Minkyung greeted him right away as Tai asked if she was busy. Minkyung answered calmly, saying she had just finished delivering some documents. Minjiho quickly joined in the conversation. He confronted Tai thanking Minkyung and said she had been a huge help. He mentioned how he had requested some documents earlier and Minkyung had delivered a flawless report. Even the auditors were impressed. He explained that thanks to her, they had received great support. Clay affirmed that Assistant Manager Kong was highly capable, saying that Minkyung still managed everything on her end so efficiently. He then asked Minkyung if she had compiled the status of the overseas construction contract and whether there was any progress with the expansion project in Saudi Arabia. Minkyung replied that the data had been collected and that the relevant department was still working on the update. She promised to have it ready for him by 3 o'clock that day. T frowned slightly and questioned whether she even understood what the priority was in that situation. Minkyung paused briefly before answering that she would make sure it was done. Hyeon, seeing everything, simply watched this scene. Tail turned his attention to Hyeonong and called him out. Tai Lee said that tasks like this should be organized by Hyeonong. After all, that was the reason he was hired. He asked sharply whether the secretary for the executive director of the trading department was a friend of Hyeonsong. Hyeong looked slightly taken aback and apologized. He admitted that he had been careless and that the responsibility was his and made an inconvenience to his work. Clay turned his head again and looked at Minkyung. He asked why she wasn't coming with him, to which Minkyung quietly agreed and got ready to follow. As they walked out, Tae casually said to the others to do their best with a bright smile, but warned them not to mess with his secretary. The door closed behind them while Hun silently watched Tai walk away with Minkyung. The scene opened with a flashback. Back in the past, Hyunong-si and Minkyung were spending time together. The three of them had gone out laughing and playing as they picked strawberries. Minkyung's smiling face had caught Hyeonsong's attention. She looked genuinely happy, and that delighted him. Back in college, there was a moment when Minkyung asked Hyeonong about his military enlistment. Hyeonong told her that he was leaving during the first week of the next month. She laughed, saying she wouldn't be able to survive school without him. Hyeonsong laughed it off and promised he'd be back soon and asked that she'd just have to wait, to which Minkyung smiled to agree. The scene shifted back to the present. Inside the TK Town Tower, Minkyung sighed as she checked the time. It was already past lunchtime again. Since the trip, Ta had been completely focused on his work, barely taking any breaks. Because of that, she had been swamped with work, too, often losing track of day and night. Still, she thought it was better than when he avoided his responsibilities. At least now he was showing some effort. She walked toward the small restaurant area, hoping to grab something to eat. Her stomach growled and she mumbled that anything simple would do, but as she looked at the shelf, she was shocked to find it empty. It seemed like most of the office workers at TK didn't eat properly either. She figured they were all just the same, too busy to care. She thought to herself that she needed something to keep her going. Her energy was low and she needed food to work. Just then, she spotted a small packet on the lower shelf. She smiled, thinking it was perfect, and tied John down to grab it. But a shadow fell over her. When she looked up, she saw Ta standing there asking why she was squatting like that. She was surprised to see the executive director in the break room. Tae, looking down at her, asked for the packet. Minkyung said it was fine, but handed it over. He took it and walked to the counter. The receptionist confirmed that his card had been accepted. As they stepped outside, T looked up at the sky and commented that the weather was nice. He asked Minkyung if she wanted to sit for a bit, and she nodded. They took a seat on a Thai junch. Tylee opened the drink bottle and took a long sip. Minkyung glanced at his face and then at his lips as he drank. She found herself staring, watching the way he gulped it down. Suddenly, Tae turned to her. He thought, why is she staring at him? He recalled something Taejin had once said. Apparently, some girls thought it was sexy when guys drank that way. Tae Lee cursed Taejun in his mind and thought maybe he was showing his charms. He quickly tried to change the subject, saying he'd once seen someone drinking it like this and found it annoying, but now it tasted refreshing. Minkyung sighed, opened the snack packet, and asked if he was having trouble digesting lately. Ta, quite depressed by her reaction, replied that he wasn't, but cursed Tae-jun under his breath, feeling awkward. As Minyoung struggled to open a chocolate bar, Tai noticed and asked if it was the same one she had liked during her training days. Minkyung looked at him and asked if he remembered that. Tai laughed, saying it was true. It was refreshing. A short memory flashed in his mind. Back during the 53rd batch of new employee training, Minyoung had given him that exact chocolate bar. She had said it was her favorite, praising it for having the best cost-performance ratio. Even when considering the cost per 100g, it was cheap. And with the quantity and taste of the nuts, nothing could beat it. Ta remembered her back then eating the same chocolate. His ears turned red just thinking about it. Even now, just like back then, the chocolate tasted too sweet for him, and the caramel stuck to his mouth. He looked at Minkyung again. She took a bite of the chocolate bar, and he couldn't stop himself from staring at Minkyung and her lips. It made him feel just as embarrassed as before. Even now, after all this time, he couldn't help but look at her. His face turned red, but he said nothing. At night in the office, Minkyung waited for the elevator. Hyung came from behind, calling her name. Minkyung turned and asked if he had finished work late again. Hyung brushed it off, mentioning how she was leaving early. Minkong replied that she was almost done with her tasks, to which Hyung noted she'd been working hard lately. He then asked why her bag seemed so heavy. Minkyung said it was because her laptop was inside. When the elevator opened, Hyun-sung quickly grabbed the bag and suggested they have dinner together, saying he knew a few good restaurants nearby. Minkong agreed, saying it sounded great. Hyun-sung mentioned he'd wanted to treat her since his first day at work, but she had always been busy. Mkai-wang smiled and apologized, saying it was her fault. At the restaurant, while grilling the steak, Minyoung took a bite and shivered at how good it tasted. She praised it, saying it was really delicious. Hyun asked her to take her time and enjoy it. Minkyung laughed, saying it felt like she was in heaven, then asked her not to skip meals just because she was busy. He said she seemed too tired lately and urged her to take care of herself. Mkai-wang assured him not to worry and said she would eat properly from now on. After eating, they laughed and chatted comfortably. Later, while getting into the car, Minyoung mentioned that she had work again the next day. Hun acknowledged it with a nod. Minyoung sighed and said she didn't want to go home. Hun asked why so suddenly, and Minkyung explained that if she went home, she'd need to shower, go to sleep, and by the time she woke up, it would be morning again and back to work. Yen, a bit taken back, said that might be true, but pointed out that at work, she came off as a total workaholic while still seeming to have a social life. Minong looked unimpressed and asked if he thought she was still some young girl. She reminded him she was an assistant manager at her company. Hyanong laughed and said she'd really grown up. Minyoung questioned what he meant, and Hyanong told her she was good at her job. Even the TF team leader had complimented her a lot. Minyoung nodded slightly, recalling that she had to apologize for what happened that day. She hadn't expected the executive director to react so angrily. She said she figured that was just how he was, but she hadn't imagined he'd behave that way toward Hyung. Hyun-sung smiled and said it was his fault, but Min-kong paused and disagreed. She thought there might have been something more to it. She remembered how the director had asked what kind of relationship she and Hyung had. She told him they were childhood friends, but regretted it immediately. The expression on the director's face had changed, and he looked genuinely upset. Minkyung figured the director had misunderstood the situation, and assumed Hyung was helping her out because of a personal relationship. She understood his perspective, but questioned whether it was worth getting that angry over. She then wondered aloud if something else had happened at the hotel that day. Hyun recalled how Tai had grabbed his wrist, saying he didn't believe Hyun was Minyoung's boyfriend, and questioned why he was escorting her to her own room, as he found it strange. Hyun asked if the director himself should be the one to escort her instead. He'd left right after, saying there was nothing between them. As they reached the hotel elevator, Min Hong, now quite drunk, leaned heavily against Hyun. He barely managed to keep her steady and commented that she was completely out of it. Min Hong, still drunk, looked around the room and said it felt like a hotel vacation. Hyun asked her to be careful not to trip. She stumbled forward and Hunong took a quick glance at the bed. Suddenly, Minkying called out to him, saying she couldn't unbutton her top and asked if he could help her take it off. Hyun, clearly embarrassed, told her she was drunk. As he helped with the buttons, he caught a glimpse of her bare chest and immediately looked away shocked. A flash of the executive director's face came to mind, and Hyun cursed under his breath. He scolded Minyoung, asking why she drank so much when she clearly had low tolerance. He asked if she had any idea how dangerous it was to act like that in front of a man. And Minkying, confused, asked what was wrong as she walked off toward the shower. Yanong sat on the edge of the bed, muttering curses. Clearly disturbed by how things had turned out, thinking it is way too dangerous. In the present, Hyun insisted that nothing had happened. Minkyung scoffed and said that if that were the case, then fine. Hyun cut her off, saying that the executive director's personality was just difficult, to say the least. Minyoung laughed and agreed. She said the other day he'd been extremely picky about his food, and she didn't like that. She started rambling about other things he did that irritated her. As she continued talking, Hun-sung held onto the steering wheel and stared ahead, lost in thought. His mind had drifted back to the executive director again. He thought that Lee was quite bothersome. A few days later, as Minjing sat at her desk typing and finishing up some tasks, she casually called out to Hyanong, saying there would be no overtime for her tonight. Hyanong immediately asked if she wanted to have dinner together, and Minjing responded that it sounded great. When he asked what time she'd be home, she said she'd be there in about half an hour, and would pick up some food on the way. She asked if he'd like some Chinese takeout, mentioning there were plenty of nice places nearby. Just then, she heard a voice behind her. She quickly asked Hyunong to give her a moment. Turning around, she saw Tai standing there with a frown, and he didn't look pleased. Minjing blinked, surprised, and said she thought he had already gone home. T smirked slightly, and said he would be working overnight at the office, which caught Minkyung off guard. Dai scoffed and reminded her almost mockingly that he'd mentioned it earlier. He explained that he needed to coordinate energy solutions in the trade department with the plant business in the construction sector. He added that he'd have to return the next day as well and sarcastically asked what was so surprising about it. Minyoung, now visibly holding back her frustration, barely able to mask her anger, tried to stay composed. While she sat still, T casually mentioned the meeting scheduled for tomorrow, and then glanced at her phone screen. Minyoung quickly apologized to Hyong over the phone, saying she wouldn't be able to make it to dinner tonight and would call him later. As she ended the call, Tai remarked that it seemed like she was supposed to have dinner with her. The word laced with sarcasm, drawing a glare from Minkying. He told her that if she had plans, she should go ahead. Then, as if remembering something, he asked if she had received all the requested data, and told her to hand it over. Minyoung admitted she hadn't finished compiling it yet. Haley said that was fine, and asked her to give him whatever she had completed so far, adding that the executive director could handle overtime just fine on his own. Minyoung clenched her fists and hit the desk lightly, then smiled to say that she couldn't let him handle everything alone and would help. T looked at her and smiled slightly, telling her to do her best, almost teasingly. Inside, he was quietly panicking. The original plan had completely fallen apart. He had come up with a genius idea, using his full brain power to get her to eat properly instead of surviving on chocolate bars. He had waited for her work hours to end, returned to the office with an excuse, ordered some delicious food, and planned to receive an urgent call and leave just after she ate. It was perfect, or it would have been if she hadn't made dinner plans with Han Sang. Now, not only had his plan failed, but she was working overtime again. He had come to take care of her, and somehow he ended up getting stuck in the office too. He recalled her face, frustrated, wondering if she was angry. Her expression clarified it that she was. Still, he told himself she'd be fine if he bought her something tasty. The least he could do was make sure she ate. Opening the door a little while later, he called out for assistant manager Minkyang, asking about dinner. But when she turned around, her smile looked lifeless and stiff. The sight of it jolted him. He mentioned that if she gave the restaurant his name, they would take care of her order, but he'd written a note just in case. Minkyang responded calmly, saying she understood and would do that next time she ordered. He tried to bring up something about the risotto, but Minjing picked up the telephone to place the order, ignoring his comment. Ta stood there awkwardly, shaken by her coldness. He considered suggesting they order 2 portions and eat together, but assumed she'd refuse if he asked directly. As Minyoung placed the order, she gave detailed instructions, spreading out the resort rice, reducing the amount of beef, increasing the Parmesan cheese, and adding other specifications. As Tail tried to tell Tylee about giving an order for 2 plates, he opened his mouth to say something, but hesitated. Before he could speak, Minkyong hung up and stood up, telling him she would step out to have some food and return, and she would pick up the food on her way back. With that, she walked out, leaving Tai frozen in place. Dazed. Sometime later, Minkying knocked gently on the office door, calling out that the food had arrived. She set the plates down in front of him and took a step back. Tai glanced at the monitor, then looked at her, asking cautiously if she could clarify something. He didn't think this matched the original data. Minyoung walked closer, but before she could respond, Tai turned slightly and asked her to sit for a moment, saying they should go over things again. Minkying took the seat without a word, and they began to review the materials. As they worked, T stared at her and muttered to question what she ate to look even hungrier than earlier. He asked if she'd only had a chocolate bar today, but Min Kong didn't respond, continuing her work silently. A few moments later, Ta nudged a dish toward her and suggested that she eat. Minkyung looked surprised and hastily declined, saying she was fine and that the meal was meant for the executive director. Till insisted he wasn't very hungry and would just have the salad. Minkyung offered to order something else, but Tai flustered, stuttered, and turned red, telling her to just eat. She eventually nodded and took the plate. As she started eating, she found herself distracted. The scent of his cologne was faint but sharp, making her slightly dizzy. Something about it was overwhelming in the quiet atmosphere. Meanwhile, Tai took a bite of his salad and remarked that it was better than fried chicken, then added that his taste buds were unusually refined. Minyoung blinked, confused, thinking to herself that the risotto barely had any flavor at all. The scene shifted as Minkyung was dozing off in the bus. She glanced around briefly, her eyes pausing on the steep slope ahead before closing them momentarily. The faint memories of clinking spoons, soft laughter, quiet breathing, the warmth of his cologne and harmless jokes swirled through her thoughts. She questioned herself. What exactly was her expression at that moment when he looked at her? Something about the way he looked at her lingered in her mind. Startled by her train of thought, Minkyung brushed it off. She wondered if she looked unwell. Reaching her apartment, she opened the door and called out that she was back, only to find Hyunong and Sia already inside, greeting her with a playful remark about her being late. She felt a brief moment of delight seeing them there. Ranong walked over, gently touching her cheek, saying he'd been waiting for her. The TV played quietly in the background. Minyoung rubbed her shoulder and sighed, joking that she was dying. Hanong immediately questioned her, pointing out that she'd said she wouldn't be working overtime anymore. He asked why she was so late again. Minkyung replied casually, saying it just kept happening. According to her, the executive director had made a habit of stopping by and finding last-minute tasks to dump on her. She added that he was acting like a child. C, visibly disturbed by this, sympathized, and asked why it felt like it had been ages since they last saw each other. Mong gave a half-hearted laugh, saying it was probably because she had been out drinking almost every day. Sia looked at her clearly worried. She mentioned how pale Minjing looked, and asked if she was eating properly. As a gesture of concern, Sia picked up a chicken leg and offered it to her, even promising to give up chicken legs for the night just for her. She flexed dramatically to lighten the mood. Minjing smiled faintly and told her it was okay. She had already had dinner. That caught Sia off guard. With genuine confusion, Sia asked what she meant. Minjing turned away slightly and muttered that the executive director had bought her dinner. Hyan, sitting nearby, had overheard it all. Sia's jaw dropped as she repeated Minjing's words in disbelief. She asked if it had really just been the two of them. Minjing didn't reply, choosing instead to sip on her cola in silence. Sia narrowed her eyes, and as her antennas activated, she stated that something felt off. She claimed there was definitely something suspicious going on, saying it all sounded like a classic drama setup. Overtime being just an excuse to spend time together. Minkyung stared at her blankly and said she had been watching too many Korean dramas lately, but Sei insisted that it could be real. Minjing shook her head. She turned away, saying flatly that the executive director didn't like her. He had made that much clear from the beginning. From the very first time they met at the training center, he'd made it obvious. Now all he did was bully her for no reason. Maybe she guessed he just felt a little guilty today. After seeing her miserable expression after a pause, Sia leaned in and asked, "What did Minyoung think about him? Did she like him?" Minyoung didn't answer immediately. Her mind drifted, recalling the way he looked, the way he acted, and the stupid little smiles that made her heart flutter at the trip. S gave a soft smile and admitted that he was extremely handsome. She said he was totally her type, and she'd love to date someone who looked like one of those idols from that group, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yendan. She said that just seeing someone like that at work would make everything feel better, but Min Young, pulling a disgusted expression, quickly shut it down. She insisted it wasn't like that. Si frowned and asked why she was acting like that. Minkying asked her to imagine a Shiba puppy. She asked Si to picture that it was cute but didn't listen. It growled whenever she got close, but still managed to be adorable. She told her to imagine taking care of that dog for more than 10 hours a day. It's quite tiring, and that was exactly how it felt. Si gave a little nod, starting to understand. Minyoung said that maybe she could endure it a bit longer and eventually transfer departments, but her pride wouldn't let her leave so easily. She wasn't going to run away. She told them both to just wait. He'd have to recognize her someday. She was determined to earn that acknowledgement no matter what. As the night wore on, Hyanong stood up and said he should get going. He wished them both good night and told Minyoung he'd see her at work the next day. Minyoung offered to walk with him, mentioning that her stomach felt off and she needed to grab some medicine anyway. Outside, under the quiet glow of the street lights, Hyung mentioned that it had already been a month since he returned to Korea. Minjing agreed, saying time had flown by. Hyunong nodded, saying, "It felt like just yesterday when they were still in school together." Minyoung smiled faintly and remarked that walking together like this felt nostalgic. They took breaks together, worked from home side by side, and even collaborated on small projects, just like old times. Hyung suddenly slowed his steps and added that back then there had been so much he could teach her, but now things had changed a lot. Hanong reflected on how much he had to teach her. But now everything had changed. A memory from the classroom surfaced, where students whispered about Minkying. They'd heard she was only 17 and had made it into the school on the first try. The rumor suggested she might have applied to a lower-ranking school instead, as this wasn't a medical school. The whispers grew louder, but then someone called her name and she turned to answer, her voice calling out to Huna. Once they were outside, Minkyung expressed her worry. She hadn't made any friends yet and felt a little isolated, but she was happy to have him by her side. Kung questioned her about how the classes were going, wondering if she was struggling. Minong explained that she was only taking calculus and linear algebra so far, and they weren't too difficult. She had also started studying mathematical statistics and regression analysis on her own, which seemed like it would be fun. The fact that statistics could uncover patterns in seemingly irregular data leading to mathematical theorems fascinated her. She thought it was amazing that any uncertainty could be captured through logic. While she didn't fully understand multivariate analysis yet, she was confident that Hyun-ong would teach her anything she didn't know. Hyun couldn't help but feel proud. He had helped her through high school, but now she was becoming much smarter than him. Minjing was startled by the idea. She quickly denied it, insisting that he knew everything. He was always involved in extracurricular activities and clubs, had many friends, and was admired by everyone. She envied him and wanted to be like him. Hyun-song patted her head, thinking how cute she was. Later at the apartment, Hyun-ong's girlfriend was with Hyun-ong.